Imba tags have a set of lifecycle methods, methods that are called by Imba at various times on your tags. If you go to imba.io and read the documentation, there's a list of all the different lifecycle methods you can use, but we're going to go over a couple of them. And render is actually a lifecycle method, because it's called automatically by Imba every time the view needs to be updated. Let's log render inside of the render method, and we'll open up the console so we can keep track of this. So you see render is called when the page is first loaded, and then it's called basically anytime I change anything, the view needs to reload, re-render, and so we just see render, render, render. It's called several times. Let's add in another lifecycle method. There's one called setup. I'll do console.log setup, and that's called very early on in the process when the tag is first created. And so that one is called once, and then render is called, and render will be called repeatedly as I interact, but setup is just called at the beginning. There's another one called mount. Let's see when that one is called. So we see setup, render, and then mount. So mount is actually called the first time the tag is mounted to the document, and so it's only called once at the beginning, but render is called before mount. So you can see now if I interact with the app, render is called several times, but setup and mount were only called once. There's another one called rendered. See if you can guess when that's going to be called. So it's called right after render, every time a render happens. Now these are there for your convenience. There may be times when you need to do something after every render. Setup and mount are pretty common to use, and in this one we're going to use setup because I have a challenge for you where I want you to adjust some of the props in this tag before it's rendered. Okay, so there's your challenge. Make the habit adder appear on the first run if there are no habits. And what I mean by that is if there's no habits and you load this page, you should see the habit adder. But if you already have some habits, then we don't need to do that, and we can just toggle it based on whether you click here. And that's because when you first come here and you don't have any habits, you definitely need to add one. So we should by default show the habit adder. Remember, we have a prop that controls this called show adder. So set this prop appropriately within setup based on whether there's already any habits. Go ahead and give that a try, and then I'll show you how to do it. Okay, so inside of setup, we're going to say if habits.length equals 0, meaning there's no habits, then show adder equals true. We're going to force that to be true if there's no habits. Okay, so I'll save that, and already I see it's working. The adder is appearing because I have no habits. Now if I add a habit, and then I reload, it doesn't appear. That's what we wanted. So this is kind of the default state of our app. But on that first run, when you have nothing here, it shows the habit adder.